This video, along with the next 3 videos, are designed as a little reteaching and intervention for students that may have struggled with solving equations in 7th grade. We're going to talk about solving 1- and 2-step equations today in this video. The next video will be on distributing and variables on both sides. Then we'll put them all together with multi-step equations. And then the 4th video in this series will just be a practice test to get you ready for the retake test. I do want to make you aware that this is not a full explanation of the background of each one of these topics. It's just to go over and review how to do these particular problems and answer questions and show examples pretty quickly. I do want to show you that if you did need a full explanation of each one of these, if you were to go to this website, you can get there by tinyurl.com/mathlaws. This is the long address right here. And then if we were to click on 7th grade, you'll notice that right over here, under 7th grade Unit 3, that's all this stuff on equations. So if I were to click on that, what we'd have here is we would have all of the different videos that and explanations that we went over in the entire unit. So it's a fairly long unit. We spend a long time on it. What we're doing now is just making sure that we reteach the really essential skills and make sure that students are ready to go. So I'm going to come back over here and we're going to take a look at these problems here. Front side is 1-step equation, back side is 2-step equations. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to show all the work for each one of these. I'm going to go ahead and write solutions on this, and then we'll just go ahead and go. Remember that in between a variable and if there's a number sitting out front, if there's nothing in between there, the only operation that we can write without using a symbol is multiplication. So I'm just going to put a dot there to remind us of that. And what we need to do in order to solve this equation, like any equation, we want to get the variable on one side completely by itself. This is the variable term. We've already isolated it. It's already on one side by itself. All we need to do is we need to get rid of multiplying by -7. We need to undo timesing by 7. We do that using the inverse of multiplying by -7, which is dividing by -7. So we're going to divide this side by -7, and we're going to divide that side by -7. -7 divided by -7 is a 1. So technically what we get here is a 1n, but we normally don't write that. We normally just write an n. And then on this side we have a positive 21 divided by a -7, so we end up with a -3. We circle that, and that's the answer. That's why it's called a 1-step equation, is it only takes 1 step to solve it. So on this one right here, we've got y plus 14 on this side, and we've got a -15 on the other side. We want to get the y by itself, so that means we want to undo the adding 14. So I'm going to subtract 14 from this side and subtract 14 from this side. Again, this is sometimes called the golden rule of algebra. Whatever we do to one side, we need to do to the other side. That keeps things balanced. 14 minus 14 is 0. So technically this is y plus 0, but adding 0 doesn't change it at all, so we normally just write y. And then over here we've got same sign, find the sum. This is going to be -19. And again, if that's confusing at all, might be a good idea to go back to Unit 1 when we talked about how to combine integers and all those arithmetic operations with integers. Let's take a look at this one. We want to get the x by itself, so we're going to add 15 on this side to undo subtracting 15. So we add 15 on both sides. Those make a 0, so x plus 0 is just a plain old x. And then we have 29 plus 15, that's going to be 44. Circle that. Always want to show our work and make sure we circle our answer. The operation represented by this fraction bar here is division. So they took b and they divided by -4. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply both sides by -4. Notice that we put the second factor on each side in parentheses. We could try and squeeze that -4 in front here, but that doesn't look very good, and it's kind of tough to squeeze in there. This is multiplying by 4, and this is dividing by, multiplying by -4 and dividing by -4. So the negatives cancel out, and the 4's cancel out, so we end up with a b over here. If we kind of wanted to get technical about how this works, this -4 is up here in the numerator, so we can cross cancel right there. And then over on the other side, we have a -4 times a -10, so that's going to be a positive 40. So we'll go ahead and circle that. Again, this is the right way to show each one of these. This is the right way to show division, right way to show subtraction and addition. This is the right way to show multiplication. Please don't do something like this. Don't write dot and then a -4. We usually don't use the dots or the x's once we get into 7th grade and beyond, just because it can kind of be confusing. So I'm going to slide down here and keep rolling through this. Let's see, we want to get the a by itself, so we want to get rid of this number right here. We want to get the a by itself, so we want to get rid of subtracting 7 or a -7, so we're going to add 7 to both sides. Those cancel each other off. This is a positive a, so I'm just going to write an a. If that had been a negative, we'd need to keep track of that, so be aware of that. And then we've got a negative 6 plus a 7, so we end up with a 1. We're done there. We've got dividing by 5 here, so we're going to multiply this side by 5 and multiply that side by 5. Notice the correct way to show the work here. Those will cancel off. We'll get an x on this side, and then we've got a negative 2 times a positive 5. That's going to be a negative 10. Continuing on here, let's take a look. This again, remember, there's nothing in between the negative 5 and the x, so that's multiplication. Sometimes if you want to put the dot there as a reminder, that would be great. We're going to divide both sides by negative 5. The negative 5s are going to cancel to be a 1, so we get an x on this side. Positive 6 divided by negative 5 is negative 12. On this one, we're going to get rid of the adding 12, so we're going to subtract 12 here and subtract 12 there. Those cancel off to make a 0, so on this side we just have that plain old n, and 12 minus 12 is 0. There's nothing wrong with getting an answer of 0. That's a perfectly good number. So taking a look at number 9, this is division. We want to undo dividing by 7, so we're going to multiply this side by 7 and multiply that side by 7. Those are going to cancel. We get an n on this side, and we get a negative 42 over here. Again, if you struggle at all with any of the integer arithmetic, a negative times a positive, negative minus a negative, different things like that, then please take a look at Unit 1. On this next one, number 10, we're going to add 3 on both sides. These are going to cancel to be a 0, so we get an r left on this side, and then we get a 38 over there. So let's take a look at the other side. So on this side, we've got two-step equations. You can tell that these are a little bit more complicated. We've got more things going on here. We isolate the variable term, so I'm going to write that down. Isolate variable term. Isolate the variable term, then isolate the variable. Then isolate the variable. Now, when we say isolate, what we mean is get the variable or the variable term by itself. The word isolate means get by itself. So the variable term in this one is right here, and sometimes I encourage my students to put a dotted circle around that. That's what we want to get by itself. So we want to leave this alone for right now. So what that means is we need to get rid of the subtracting 3. So we're going to add 3 here and add 3 here. Like before, those are going to cancel each other out. So what we're left with over on this side is what we were trying to isolate, that 5x over here. And then we have a 42 plus 3. That's a 45. And you'll notice once we've done that step, we now have something that hopefully looks familiar. This is a one-step equation. So we're going to divide by 5 here, divide by 5 here. Those are going to cancel, and we're going to get 45 divided by 5 is 9. Circle that, and that's the answer. Now remember, the whole point of solving these is to get the number that when we plug it in, it makes the equation true. So watch what happens if I plug that in there. This would be 5 times 9 minus 3, and what we hope is that equals 42. Now, it's not absolutely necessary to go through and check, but you can check your own answers, because on this side we get 45 minus 3. 45 minus 3 is 42, and 42 does equal 42, so it does check out. Notice on this one, the variable term would be right here. This is one of those short division bars, so these two are stuck together. We want to get rid of the 5, so we're going to subtract 5 from both sides. Those are going to cancel. We get x over 7 equals, let's see, 1 minus 5, that would be negative 4. And then we want to undo dividing by 7, so we're going to multiply this side by 7 and multiply that side by 7. They cancel here, so we get x equals negative 28 over on that side right there. And again, the goal with this is to be fluent enough with basic arithmetic facts, basic integer arithmetic, and basic solving techniques that it really can go this quickly. Let's take a look at this one. This one's slightly different. Notice the long fraction bar. Fraction bars are grouping symbols, especially these long ones. These two are stuck together right now. So that means we want to keep the x minus 1 together. What we want to get rid of is the dividing by 10. So I'm going to multiply this side by 10, and I'm going to multiply this side by 10. Those are going to cancel, so that's going to leave an x minus 1 over here, and we've got a 2 times 10. That's a 20. And then the last step is just to get rid of that subtracting 1 by adding 1. So we get x equals 21. And again, we could double check it by plugging that into the problem and see if it makes the equation true, but it will. Again, we want to isolate the variable term. There's the variable term. That means we want to get rid of subtracting 9. So we're going to add 9 here and add 9 here. Those are going to cancel each other out, so we get x over 3. And on this side, negative 7 plus 9 is a 2. We're going to undo the dividing now, so we're going to multiply this side by 3 and multiply that side by 3. Those are going to cancel, and we get x equals 6. We'll slide down here and take a look at this next part. Again, short fraction bar on this one. So we're going to keep those together. We're going to get rid of the 5. We're going to do that by subtracting 5. Notice that there's nothing in front, and remember, if there's not a sign in front, we get to assume that it's positive. Those are just the rules that mathematicians came up with. So 5 minus 5 is 0, so we get x over 6 equals 8 minus 5 would be 3. And then we want to undo this dividing by 6, so we're going to multiply by 6 over here on both sides. Those cancel. We get x on this side, and then we get 18 there. So there's our answer. Let's see, here we go. Long fraction bar, so those are grouped together. So we're going to multiply by that 7 to undo the dividing by 7. Those will cancel. We'll have 2 plus x over here, and then we get 70 on the other side when we do that multiplication. We're going to get rid of that 2, and again, just like before, this is understood to be a positive 2, so we get rid of that by subtracting 2. So we end up with x is equal to 68 there. And then sliding down just a little bit more, let's take a look at these last couple on the worksheet. Here's the variable term. Now I'm going to circle this entire thing right here. It's the coefficient with the number and the sign in front there. This is a 9, so we're going to get rid of that by subtracting 9. So this is going to be 30 minus 9. That's going to be a 21. And we get a 7a here. And then again, there's nothing in between here, so we want to undo multiplication. So we're going to divide by negative 7. Divide by negative 7 on both sides here. Now, some people might think, oh, I need to divide by a positive 7, but if we were to divide by a positive 7, we wouldn't be canceling off the negative, so that would create an issue right there. We want that to be a positive a over here, and then we end up with a negative 3 on that side. And then over here, again, we've got that right there. There's our variable term. We want to undo the subtracting 3, so we're going to add 3. That's going to give us a 5 on this side, and an, x over a negative 8. So we want to undo dividing by negative 8. So again, we need to do multiplication, and we need to multiply by a negative to cancel off that negative. I'm going to put the second one on each side in parentheses. Those are going to cancel. I get an x over here, and we get negative 40 on this side. Make that look like a 40 there. There we go. And then these last two problems here. We want to get rid of the 6 right here because remember, those are stuck together. There's our variable term right there. So we want to subtract 6. That's going to leave us with a 20 on this side and a negative 4v over here. This is multiplying by negative 4, so we're going to divide by negative 4. Again, if you need to put the little dot there to remind yourself that that's multiplication, go right ahead. We get a v on this side, and we get a negative 5 over there, and that's the answer. Very last one, kind of an interesting problem here. Here's the variable term. Again, I'm going to circle the variable with the number, the coefficient, the sign out front. This is understood to be a 1 in front there. We get rid of the 6 by adding 6 to both sides. So don't forget this. A lot of people will do this. They'll just write down b, but they'll forget to put the negative there. We're not quite done with this because we don't want negative b. We want its opposite. We want positive b. So if we want the opposite of this one, we want the opposite of that one also. So we get negative 15 right there. The other way to finish this problem off is by doing this. This is understood to be a negative 1, so this would be negative 1 times b. If we were to divide both sides by negative 1, notice the 1's cancel, the negative 1's cancel, we get a b over here, and we've got a positive 15 divided by a negative 1, so we end up with a negative 15. All right, that's the assignment on 1 and 2-step equations. Hopefully you've gotten help with half of those problems. If you needed to watch this to either check or get some help on the other ones, great. Again, if you need to, please go to the website, check out the stuff in Unit 3. There's OneStep Equations right here. We've got notes, a video, and then an assignment that you can also do that's similar to this one. And then we've got several others. We've got a part 2 on this. All of these are one-step equations. And then 2-step equations is 3.3. So we've got all of these worksheets and all of these videos that would explain how to do these again. All right. Good luck with that.